everyone. Welcome to our Letting Go webinar. My name's Amy. I go under the handle @Carousel on War on Cancer. Today we're going to learn the letting go technique, which was developed by a psychiatrist called David Hawkins. Most of the session actually will be a kind of guided meditation, a practice that I will guide you through. But first, I'll just introduce myself, and then we'll spend a bit of time just learning a bit more about Dr. David Hawkins, and we'll also dive into some of the theory behind the letting go practice, because it's helpful some context before we do a meditation. You'll see that there's a link actually in the chat, if you can see that, to his book. So you can check that out too. I'm just going to share my screen with a brief presentation to talk about David Hawkins. Okay, so David Hawkins was a American psychiatrist. He was born in 1927, and he has more than 50 years of clinical experience. So a very, very experienced psychiatrist. He began his life actually as a psychiatrist, so sort of very medically minded and very focused on kind of drug prescribing. But then through the middle of his career, he actually got more into kind of the psychology and was sort of acted more as a psychologist, so more into the kind of behavioural science and the behavioural side of psychology beyond medication. And then in the latter part of his life, he got more into sort of spiritual practices and probably would have called himself a spiritualist. And actually, he described himself as a researcher of consciousness. So very experienced guy, published more than 15 books in a very sort of long and distinguished career. And the other thing I really like about him is the breadth, you know, of what the areas that he worked in. So across kind of psychiatry, psychology, and spirituality. And he also worked in many different settings. So the first part of his career was very clinical. So in very clinical settings with very serious diagnoses like schizophrenia and those sorts of mental illnesses. And then he also worked in kind of spiritual and private practice as well. So a real breadth there. And the book that this practice is based on is called Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender. It was actually the last book he wrote before he died in 2012. And lots of people say it's a really good book because it kind of culminates a lot of his work over the years, and is a great, like, refers to lots of his other theories and research as well through his career. So yeah, I'd really recommend having a look at that if you enjoy this practice and want to find out more. But we'll talk a bit now just about some of the theory behind the letting go practice that Hawkins talks about in his book. So one of the things he covers is this scale of consciousness that you'll see there now on your screen. And it's quite a helpful kind of framework just to think about this when you're in the meditation, just to kind of describe some of the emotions that you might be feeling. So Hawkins talks about this scale, and he starts at the lowest level where, you know, would be sort of the most suffering and would be the most difficult emotions, up to, you know, more enjoyable emotions. So he starts there at shame, goes through to guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride, courage. Courage is quite an interesting one. Hawkins describes it's where the kind of emotions sort of shift into something more positive. So courage can actually be a really nice emotion to tap into and to feel in your heart, if you can, when we're going through something hard. And then it's neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, and then enlightenment. The numbers, actually, the numerical reference is kind of what Hawkins has created. So he sort of devised the numerical system. And you can read more about the scale of consciousness online as well. There's quite a few articles about it, but quite interesting just to have that framework and think about the different values and enjoyment of some of those emotions. The other thing he covers in his book, which is helpful, is he talks about the typical coping strategies that we have as humans when we go through something hard. And these are kind of the typical coping strategies that you would see and that you would experience. Within this, we probably all have our sort of preferred coping mechanisms, and we'll use them to, you know, at different times to differing degrees. But there's basically three categories. So there's suppression and repression, there's expression, and then there's escape. So suppression and repression, that's when you would knowingly or unknowingly stuff a difficult feeling down. It's also when you might kind of minimize something you're going through, or you might kind of project it, you know, and see your pain in someone else or in something else, or you might deny your feelings. So an example of that would be, you know, when we have cancer, would be something like, oh, I'm okay because I've got great medical care, or it's not so bad because it's not as bad as Tom's cancer, or isn't it lucky that I've got a loving family? So, you know, there's sort of tactics that we might use. The other option we have is expression. So that's when you might kind of share with a friend or a therapist. And that again can be helpful. And then another way might be to sort of offload in a moment of distress. So that would be, say, when you've had a really hard day and you're driving in traffic and someone cuts you up, and you kind of, you know, honk your horn and give that person some abuse. That's sort of offloading in the moment, which is a form of expression, and it definitely can relieve stress in the moment. But obviously it has some downsides as well, because you might do that and then you might realize you've overreacted and feel a little bit guilty afterwards, for example. The other option we have is escape. So that's when you would just try to keep busy, maybe with work or caring for others. It's also where kind of the sort of substances would come in as well, into a form of escape. So maybe we have a glass of wine, and even sort of, you know, getting really into like running or exercising or retail therapy, those sorts of things. Sort of we try to keep busy and do anything but spend time with our feelings. And there's nothing wrong with all of these things, by the way. We all do them, and, you know, it's just interesting to sort of see it laid out there. But what Hawkins found with all of these typical coping strategies is that they don't really address our pain and our emotional distress. They're more about sort of avoiding them. And, you know, sharing with a friend and expressing can be helpful, but actually sometimes we can get very attached to our narrative, and it doesn't always kind of relieve stress in the long term. So Hawkins came up with a fourth option for us, which is the letting go technique. And Hawkins found that if we invite the feelings into our awareness and we allow them to run their course without judgment and trying to problem solve them, we actually reduce the intensity of the intensity behind those feelings. So we're feeling fear, by just allowing fear to come into our awareness and being with it, which we're going to have a go of now with this meditation, we actually reduce the intensity of those feelings over time, and we suffer less. And, you know, I can absolutely attest to that research, because I've used this technique a lot. So like most of you guys on here, I experienced cancer. I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in January 2019. And it had spread to some other organs and lymph nodes, so it wasn't a great prognosis. And like I'm sure all of you can relate to, it's a really terrifying time, like plenty of grief. I had a lot to cope with a very radical surgery. And I had lots of fears, you know, fear of death, fear of leaving my family. Also, like the big kind of fertility question came up for me, so fear around my fertility. Fear of my sort of healthy body, you know, withering away, and a lot of fear of the future. So I had a lot of fear and grief, But I was also really guided to find peace. That really seemed like the route that I wanted to take, and I was really kind of guided that that should be my focus, was to find inner peace. But honestly, I didn't always feel peaceful, right? I don't think you can probably go through something like cancer or, you know, many other traumas and feel peaceful all the time. And I had to really be honest with myself that the tools I had, because I have studied psychology and I've worked with therapists before, really, you know, with a lot of enjoyment. But honestly, a lot of those tools weren't really working, actually, because I was just experiencing so much fear. And so I really needed some tools and techniques that would help me to process those fears. And actually, Hawkins found that in his research, when he looked at that scale of consciousness, it's very difficult to experience those higher feelings of like love and peace if you've got a lot of guilt or shame or fear in your consciousness or subconscious. So he found that by clearing out some of those more difficult feelings, you've got more space to have kind of peace. Yeah, and I really found this practice really, really beneficial, and spent many hours kind of working on different issues that were causing me distress. And it's something that can be done completely, you know, in the privacy of your own home, also in the privacy of your own mind. So there's no need to share anything with anybody, and you can actually be really honest about your distress, because you're not asking anybody else to kind of witness that. So we're going to have a go of the guided meditation ourselves now. Just take a few minutes just to get comfortable in your seat, in your place. Hopefully you're somewhere where you can close your eyes and just listen to my voice. This part will probably take about 30 minutes or so. So if you just want to close your eyes, you can sit up or you can lie down, whatever's most comfortable for you. And it's quite nice, first of all, just to start to focus on your breathing, just to kind of bring yourself into the moment, kind of into your body. So you can just take a few deeper breaths now. It can be nice actually just to put one hand on your chest and one hand on your tummy. And as you're breathing, just feel that expansion, just the rising and falling of your chest and your tummy. And just put your hands down by your side. Just see if you can feel the air coming in and out of your nostrils, just tickling your nose. And if you experience distress or your mind starts to wander through this practice, it can be nice just to bring your attention just back to your breathing. Okay, and now Just think about the situation that you want to work on during this practice. Is there a specific situation that's causing you distress? It could be something that happened in the past, or something you're experiencing now, or a worry about the future. So just search your mind and just see what you come up with. And just trust yourself as well. And you can just work on whichever situation comes to mind that feels like the right thing to work on today. And it's good just to have a short line for that situation. So it might be, for me, it might be something like infertility or fear of cancer returning. Whatever it is for you, just have a little line to describe it to yourself in your head. And just hold that situation in your mind. What we're not doing in here is we're not ruminating on that problem, and we're not trying to problem solve it. So there's a part of our mind that's very good at problem solving, trying to find solutions, or ruminating on that issue, going round and round in circles. But we're going to do something differently today. So we're going to hold that situation in our mind. Okay, but we're not going to ruminate on it. We're just going to hold it in our mind. The fear of cancer returning, for example, or cancer returning. Okay, and now just see what emotions are there for you behind that situation. So when you hold that situation in your mind, what emotions come up for you? I'll give you a minute just to search your mind or your emotions, your heart, for the feelings that come up related to that situation. Maybe it's fear or grief. Think about that scale of consciousness slide that we saw. Perhaps it's shame or guilt or anger. So just name that emotion to yourself. Often there's more than one emotion related to a situation. If that's the case for you, just choose the one that feels like the one you want to work on today, or the one that feels more prevalent. Just choose emotion. Okay, now we've got the situation in our mind, and we've identified the emotion, or one of the emotions that's attached to that situation. Okay, and now we're just going to invite that emotion to our awareness. So you say to yourself, I invite fear into my awareness, or I invite grief into my awareness. Or I invite anger into my awareness. And just keep saying that to yourself. I invite fear into my awareness. And it can feel a bit uncomfortable, because usually we would try to avoid this work and these feelings. But just try your best just to keep inviting that feeling into your awareness. Without running away from it, without trying to change it in any way. Just allow it. Just allow that feeling into your awareness. And you can say to yourself, this is fear, or this is anger, or this is grief. I'm allowing grief into my awareness. Okay, and now see if there's anywhere on your body where you're feeling that emotion. Perhaps you feel it in your chest area, or perhaps you feel it in your throat, or your head, or even your shoulder blades or back. When you invite that feeling of fear or anger into your awareness, do you feel it on your body? Do you feel any tension? Usually there's a place where you're holding that emotion. For me, often actually it's in my chest area. Okay, so just keep inviting that feeling into your awareness. And see if you can just increase the intensity of that physical sensation in your body. And just know this practice is very safe. It can feel strange because we're not used to behaving like this when we feel distress. But just know it's a very safe way to experience your emotions. And if you were to compare that feeling to, I don't know, a headache or period pains, it's actually quite a gentle, subtle feeling. Okay, and it is completely safe. So just keep inviting that feeling into your awareness and see where you feel it on your body. And just tune your mind into that feeling. Okay, and you can say to yourself, this is how I feel fear. Well, this is what anger feels like to me. And just really try and be with that emotion in your mind. And now see if you can name that physical sensation. Does it feel like a pressure? Or is it more of a acute kind of sharp pain? Or does it feel like a fluttering? Just try to name that physical sensation to yourself. Okay. And then you can say to yourself, this is how I feel fear. This is what anger feels like to me. And you might start to have other physical sensations as you just keep inviting it up. Sometimes you can get like heart sort of palpitations, or your heart can start to beat faster, or perhaps you might start to get very hot, or you can start to sweat or to cry. And it's very normal. It's just part of the release. Sometimes I start to feel like a sort of shaking my body actually, as I'm like allowing these feelings to come up in me. Okay, so just say to yourself, I allow these feelings to rise. I allow anger to come into my awareness. This is how I feel anger. Just keep tuning your mind into that physical sensation in your body. And just see if you can let that feeling, that emotion, that physical sensation just really flood your system. And just do it as best you can, because it can feel uncomfortable. But anything you can do is a really amazing release. And you're just being with your feelings here, without judgment, without trying to solve them, and using that very human bit of our mind that likes to problem solve or rationalize or figure out. So just let that feeling really flood your body and be with it as best you can. Sometimes helps to imagine yourself like you're the kind of witness to these feelings. And there's lots of theories about emotions. But one of them is that these emotions, they're in us to be released. And sometimes, the difficult situations that we're in, although they're very distressing, perhaps they have a purpose. Perhaps they've come into our experience so that we can release some of these difficult feelings that we hold in us, so we can have more peace in our lives. And you're doing an awesome job here just to be with those feelings and just to allow them to come into your awareness, because it's actually the resistance that causes our suffering sometimes. And with practice, we can just get more and more used to just being with those feelings, actually, just allowing them, not having such an adverse or allergic reaction to them, just allowing them to come up. And it does take quite a bit of focus in the mind, just to be very focused on that emotion, on that feeling in your body. And there is always the desire to run away. But the more you can be with that feeling and just allow it to come into your awareness, allow it to flood your body, to flood your experience, the more release you will have. And you're just releasing, actually. When we stop resisting, we instantly start to release. And you can use your breath as you're doing this, as you're inviting those feelings into your awareness. Just take some deep breaths if things start to feel uncomfortable. Sometimes I also just like to shake my head or shake my arm, or that can also help. Just to be really focused on that physical sensation. Okay, so just say to yourself again, I allow anger into my awareness. And that's it, just those words, allowing, inviting, are really powerful. I'm inviting fear into my awareness. I'm inviting anger into my awareness. It's something you do in your mind. And you might want to see what visual experiences come to you as you've got your eyes closed. The visual experience that I had often with fear, for example, was that it was like a homeless person that was trying to get my attention, or knocking on my door, that wanted to be let in. And for all these years, I've been slamming that door. Fear wasn't welcome in my experience, or I didn't want that person that smelled and, looked very dishevelled and distressed. I didn't want that person in my home. And for me, this practice is almost like I recognize that I've been slamming the door on that fear all these years. But with this practice, what I'm doing is I'm opening that door and I'm inviting that person in with love, actually, inviting that person into my house. And I'm inviting him to come and sit down by the fire with me. And I'm telling him that he's welcome here. And for me, that was a really powerful visual experience. So I'll just give you a few minutes here just to think about that situation you're working on, those feelings, that feeling that's coming up into your awareness, that physical sensation, and just see if you have any story or a visual practice or anything that just comes to you as you're just allowing that feeling in. What does it seem like to you? Just keep inviting, keep welcoming. If you start to get hot or to sweat or anything, it's perfectly normal. Okay, I'll just give you another minute more just to keep inviting that feeling into your awareness. And when you do this practice on your own, you can spend as long as you need to in this part of the practice, as long as you can bear, really. And it is really brave what you're doing here, because there is a huge attraction to running away and avoiding it. And it can feel painful to allow these feelings up. But it does relieve them in the long term. And the more you do this practice, the more relief you will have and the less fear you will experience. So even when you go through difficult things in your experience, you will have less fear or less anger or less grief, and you can be peaceful even amidst, some really distressing circumstances. You can have more peace inside once you process this fear, the fears and the grief and the anger. It's really, really worthwhile. I even found that releasing fear on one situation, I actually had less fear overall. So I used to have a phobia of worms, and I never actually worked on that directly, but I released a lot of fear about cancer. And now I have a much less visceral reaction to worms. They don't really bother me anymore. So it can be really a powerful practice to reduce fear or grief in all areas of your life. Okay, and we'll just say that emotion that you had coming up there, that anger, for example, just see if there's any other emotions attached to that experience, because often behind anger, for example, is grief or fear. So just search your mind again when you bring that situation to mind. Just see if there's any other emotions that come into your awareness that we can just do a little release on again now. And if there isn't, you can just keep working on that same emotion that you were working on before. Okay, and we'll just do the same practice again with that new emotion. Or you can keep working on the same emotion. So just invite that emotion into your awareness again. So I allow grief to rise in my awareness, or I allow guilt to rise in my awareness, or I allow shame to rise in my awareness. Whatever emotion it is that you're working on, just allow that to come up again. And just practice being the witness to it, kind of sticking to it, kind of allowing it, not running away like what we would normally do, or shutting it down, stuffing it back down. It's just that little subtle energy of allowing. And even if you can, welcoming. And again, just use your breath if things get a bit intense, or have a little shake. Okay. And just see if that emotion has a place on your body. Does it go into the same place as the other emotion? Or is it a different spot? Okay, and as you're just keep inviting that emotion into your awareness, just allowing it until you feel it somewhere in your body. And then just see if you can name that physical sensation again. Does it feel like a pressure, or like a tension? Or is it more like a sharp, acute pain? Or is it more like a fluttering? Just describe that physical sensation to yourself. Okay, and mentally just keep focused on that feeling, that physical feeling, and just allow it again to flood your body. Just say to yourself, I allow this emotion into my awareness. And say to yourself, this is how I feel grief. Or this is what shame feels like to me. And just keep inviting it in. And I'll give you a couple of minutes now just to keep inviting whichever emotion it is that you're working on. And just allowing it to flood your body and just being with it. Just giving it the time and attention that it's been asking for. And it's very safe. It's a really safe way just to experience your emotions. This is how I feel grief. Okay, I'll just give you a few more seconds just to finish off that practice, or that part of the practice. Okay, and now I'll show you a bit of the ways that you can let go of that a bit, part of the letting go practice. So what we've been doing there is just allowing these feelings to rise into our awareness. Okay, and let's just see if there's anything that we can let go of. So I'm going to say to you now, if you say to yourself, I let this situation go. Okay, so that situation that you were working on, if you say to yourself, I let this situation go, just say it to yourself with quite a bit of conviction and just see what response you get, whether you get a yes or a no. Okay, so I let this situation go. And normally we'll get a kind of sort of yes or a no kind of response that you will recognize in your awareness. And you know, it's very normal to get a no response, especially if you're working on something very big. So for me, I spent many sittings working on the same situation again and again and again. Okay, so if you get a no response, it's very normal, very typical, and Hawkins talks about that in his book. So if you get a no response, what Hawkins suggests is that we see if there's any parts of the situation that we can let go of. And it can be quite practical, quite small things. So he gave the example of someone having an argument, for example, and they're very upset with their spouse, for example. Okay, and then they say, I let this situation go. And the answer is clearly no. I'm not ready to let that situation go. I've still got anger, or I've still got upset. And so what he suggests is that he helps the patient to find things they can let go of about that situation. So if it's an argument, for example, it would be, can I let go of sending an angry text now to that person? Yeah, I can let go of that. Can I let go of punching the wall now? Yeah, I can let go of that. So just another example that he gave was with somebody that had lost their job and they couldn't let go of that situation because it was still very hurtful to them. But could they let go of the need to have to get on the train the next day? Or could they let go of the need to sit back at their desk tomorrow? Yeah, I can let go of that. So just search your mind with that situation that you are working on and see if you can come up with any elements of it that you can let go of. Another good one is to let go of needing to solve that problem now. So yeah, I can let go of needing to solve this problem now. And you'll just feel a really subtle release in your body. And another option he gives is letting go of the need to resist the feeling. So what we've been doing actually is a letting go in itself. Even just allowing those feelings is a letting go. But yeah, he says that at this point you could just say, I let go of the need to resist that feeling of grief and just allow that feeling of grief just to flood your body again. Okay, so I'll just give you a couple of moments now just to search your mind and see if there's something that you can let go of about that situation. And if you struggle, just let go of the need to solve the problem now, or let go of the need to resist those feelings. Okay, I'll just give you another minute just to do that. Okay, and now we'll just do another little bit of the letting go practice. So we're just going to do a little visual experience. If you just imagine that you've got a balloon in your hand, an deflated balloon, and we're just going to blow it up. And all of the emotion, all of those feelings that you've allowed up, all of the little micro bits of the situation you've been able to let go of, we're just going to blow them all into a balloon and let it float away. So just imagine, close your eyes, just imagine you've got a balloon just held between your thumb and your finger, and just take it to your mouth and just blow it up. And now just hold the string that's tied to that balloon that's now inflated. And keeping your eyes closed, just hold your arm above your head. And when you're ready, just release your fist. Okay, and just imagine that balloon floating away from you towards the horizon. And in your mind's eye, you can just watch that balloon floating away. Okay, and just give you a few minutes here just to take some breaths. And we're coming to the end of the practice now. Okay, and you've been really brave to even attend this webinar today, or to watch this webinar and to have a go at this practice, because it can feel very different. So just tap into that feeling of courage in your heart. It's quite nice just to bow your head actually at this moment, and just let that feeling of courage just bubble up in you. Okay, and also it's really nice to thank yourself for having the courage to come and do this today. Okay, and giving yourself the time to do this. So just bow your head and just give thanks to yourself. And just feel that subtle feeling of gratitude in your heart for yourself, for the time that you've taken to do this. Okay, just thank yourself. Okay, thank you. And when you're ready, just bring your head up and just gently open your eyes. Okay, well done. If you've got a drink, just have a little sip of your drink. Okay, and I'm just going to give you some tips for the rest of the day, because this healing that you've given yourself will actually continue for the next 24 hours or so. And you've let up some really difficult feelings potentially. So you might feel some congestion and discomfort actually in your body, in your heart area, or wherever it was that you felt the tension. So I just suggest that you drink plenty of water through the next 24 hours. And also just to have a little release, like just to shake your hands, shake your head, you know, not just now, but through the rest of the today and the next day. And if you're into music or whatever, you know, maybe put something, whatever music on feels right to you, and just have a shake. And just like my area often is my heart, so it helps me just to shake my heart area a little bit, you know, shake my body like that. And also my arms, I sometimes feel it. So just, yeah, over the next 24 hours, just drink plenty of water, have a little shake, and yeah, the healing will continue. I'm just gonna put some music on now, just some gentle music. I might have a little shake, a little head shake, but feel free to sign off, or if you want to stay for the music and just have a little shake, you know, please do that, or a dance around. Okay, and thank you so much for joining today.